Ronaldo or Messi? It's been a never-ending debate for well over a decade, one that in its extremist form has led to murder.
But Ronaldo scored more goals.
But Messi has 7 Ballon d'Ors.
But Ronaldo's done it in 3 countries.
But Messi does things no other player could dream of doing.
Whatever your stance, there's no denying both have been absolute freaks of nature, and it's unlikely we'll ever see two players show their level of dominance and consistency again. But because of the who's better debate, it means a more interesting debate has been ignored. The debate of why Messi and Ronaldo are so good. The lazy answers from pundits is to say that Messi is the most naturally gifted player ever and Ronaldo is the most conditioned player ever. But both players are insanely gifted and have unrivaled work ethics that separate them from every other person in their craft. And gifts and hard work are not what allows two people to dominate a sport for 15 years, and nor is simply having the competition of each other to spur each other on. For all their differences, Ronaldo and Messi actually have one key thing in common that has propelled them into the footballing gods that we know them as today. And that something is something dark, something unexpected, something that neither of them wanted to experience, but something it turned out was necessary. And that something is trauma. They both underwent something terrible in their formative years. So let's explore this unexpected reason behind the greatness of Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. As a child living in Rosario, Santa Fe, Lionel Messi was showing all the signs of a football prodigy for his boyhood team, Newell's New Boys. He was always on the small side, but as he and his peers turned 11 years old, it became noticeable that little Leo was getting left behind physically. This soon led to a diagnosis of growth hormone deficiency disorder, or GHD, a genetic condition that causes stunted growth. If left untreated, GHD can lead to reduced bone strength and length, lower cognitive abilities, and unexpected decreases in muscle mass. For Messi, this was a shocking blow to take. It threatened his dreams of becoming a professional footballer, and his club offered no support in paying the $900 a month treatment of injections. Fortunately, his father's medical insurance would cover this for 2 years, but beyond that, there was no plan. But the experience was traumatic. Every day Messi would have to lie down and have needles jabbed into his legs to receive his treatment. At first he'd sit there squeamish and gasp at the pain, but over time he got used to them despite the never-ending discomfort that came with eventually having to give the injections to himself. As he saw his peers go through puberty, young Leo was forever playing catch-up in his physical stature. Hundreds of painful injections a year just to stay behind everyone else. Eventually his father's insurance ran out and the family faced a crisis in trying to find a club that would help pay for this necessary treatment. Fortunately, the Messi family had relatives in Catalonia and were able to organise a trial with Barcelona for the now 13-year-old Messi. The rest, they say, is history. With an agreement signed on a napkin that included cover his medical expenses, Barca welcomed the young Argentine into their youth academy. Meanwhile, in the Portuguese island of Madeira, a young Cristiano Ronaldo was facing his own hardship. His father, Dinis Aveiro, was a war veteran, stationed in Africa during the time of the Portuguese Wars. The living conditions were appalling, with soldiers being left half-starved when rotten food supplies arrived. To survive, the soldiers had to live on local beer because the water from rivers wasn't safe enough to drink. And that's when Ronaldo's father first turned to alcohol. On his return to Portugal, he came back to a poor economy, meaning few jobs were available, even for army veterans. So he, like many others, spent their days in the bars getting drinks paid for them by those who respected that he had served. It was not long before he became an alcoholic. For young Cristiano, he was robbed of a true father figure, not seeing him for long periods during the war, and then only seeing his father come back drunk from the bars late at night. It was painful to experience and painful to watch the conflict it caused in the family home between his father and mother, to see his father not show up for his family and not put food on the table. But in an attempt to turn his life around, Ronaldo's father got a job as the kit man at his son's local team. Yet this led to Cristiano becoming bullied by other children who laughed at his dad's low position. For young Cristiano, he saw around him other children who had present fathers, those who would celebrate their every goal and who would always be around for a kick around. But that's something he never really got. His father's alcoholism continued and his lack of presence in Cristiano's life grew. As Ronaldo's career began to develop, his father made attempts to overcome his addiction, but the damage had already been done. In 2005, when Ronaldo was just 20, his father passed away from alcohol-related liver disease. So why did Messi's GHD diagnosis and Ronaldo's alcoholic father lead to their greatness? Well, psychologists have found that a disproportionate number of highly successful people have in some shape or form experienced life trauma. For Messi, it was traumatic being diagnosed with a serious disease as a child, which threatened to take away the thing he truly loved. And for Ronaldo, it was traumatic to see his father become a broken man due to his addiction. The interesting thing though is that trauma is actually necessary to experience if you want to develop resilience, the ability to come back stronger from setbacks, failures, and hard times. Psychological research into Olympic gold medalists has shown that many feel that they reach the top of their sport due to experiencing some trauma, such as non-selection, serious injury, political unrest, or death of a family member. And other studies have demonstrated that those who reach the top of their field are often those who have experienced a moderate level of trauma. Because too little trauma leaves you soft, complacent, you've got nothing to overcome or nothing to run away from. And if you've had too much trauma, that can leave you as a broken individual. You can become completely shattered in your worldview and lose all sense of hope. So there's almost this sweet spot of trauma that you could say both Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi faced during their formative years. For Messi, it was traumatic being diagnosed with GHD, but it wasn't as traumatic as being diagnosed with other conditions that leave some children facing 20 or 30 surgeries throughout their childhood. And similarly for Ronaldo, it was of course traumatic to see his father's gradual decline, but it was perhaps not as traumatic as the child who has their father suddenly taken away from them through a brutal murder. This somewhat ideal level of trauma for these two greats would have at times left them feeling angry, frustrated, and ultimately also developed chips on their shoulders. For Messi, he would have wanted to defy the odds with what was possible of someone of his size. And for Ronaldo, he would have wanted to use his career as a vehicle to provide for his mother and the rest of the family that were neglected during his father's troubled years. They've both gone through what is termed post-traumatic growth, the idea that an individual goes through positive psychological change as a result of highly stressful and challenging life experiences. And it's easy to see how this has continued to impact them both long after their respective traumas. We saw how upset Messi got having to leave Barcelona, but people forget that his last couple of years there, he wasn't actually happy, and at times he wanted to leave. But when it was finally time to go, it would have brought back all those memories of what he had to endure to overcome the limitations of his GHD. He was grateful to Barcelona for taking a chance on him and continuing to pay for the necessary treatment that would have otherwise jeopardised his development into an adult. And for Ronaldo, we saw how upset he got at being presented with unseen footage of his father during an interview with Piers Morgan in 2020. He went on to say how painful it was to become the #1 player in the world and to not have his father be alive to see that, to see him receive awards and to see what he became. But it is this pain that both Ronaldo and Messi have suffered that have led to their never-ending desire to keep performing at the highest level and to squeeze every last ounce out of their talents. And once they both retire, the debates of who was better will reignite. Thousands of wasted hours on arguments that just go round in circles. Instead, I believe we should forget that debate and appreciate the deeper, darker issue that ironically allowed both Ronaldo and Messi to shine brighter than any other players we have ever seen.